start the... Perfect. Thank you. So this session will be recorded so that it can be accessed after this session. We're aiming to post this on our YouTube channel so that others who weren't able to attend can access it at a time that's more convenient for them. So welcome everybody to the very first webinar in our series of webinars for our LEAF Marque Standard version 17 public consultation. Our public consultation started last week, and we'll be holding a series of 5 webinars to talk through the key changes across the standard, including kind of the structural changes, language changes, as well as the changes to the control points. Before we get started, we'll just do some quick introductions. So my name is Abby. I am our Standards and Impacts Manager in LEAF Marque. I look after the development of the LEAF Marque Standard, as well as our impacts workstream, developing indicators to monitor and measure the intended outcomes of LEAF Marque and the standard. I've been with LEAF for a little bit over 2 years now, and I recently moved into this role as of January. So I'll hand over to my colleague Molly to do a brief introduction.
Yes, good afternoon everyone. My name is Molly and I am the Standard Setting Officer here at LEAF. Like Abby, I've been here for just over 2 years and I work directly with Abby in the LEAF Marque team.
Thanks, Molly. So I'll be running us through the slides today and running the Q&A session, and Molly will be here to support the session. If you have questions, please do put them in the Q&A session. It's right next to the chat button, but if you put those in the Q&A section, that will ensure we don't miss any questions or they don't get lost. So that would be great. We'll first run through the slides, and then we'll be doing the question and answer session at the end. We'll also have at the end a very quick 1 to 2 minute just feedback survey, just to give us some final feedback on the different topics we're covering today, just so we can understand any challenges or feedback you have with specific things that we'll be walking through today. So a brief overview of what we'll be covering. First, a very quick overview of what LEAF Marque is, as well as our general approach to setting the standard, setting the LEAF Marque Standard. Then a little bit of a review of where we've gotten to so far in the development of version 17, including how we've reviewed the previous version of the standard, how we're conducting our public consultation, and then we'll go into the overview of key changes in the standard in version 17, including those structural changes, key language changes, as well as our proposed approach to tiering the standard in version 17. And then we'll wrap up the session with some next steps on what's coming up in the rest of the development of version 17, and then we'll have our question and answer session. So if we get started first with a very brief summary of what LEAF Marque is. Many of you might be familiar already, but in case you are new to LEAF Marque and the LEAF Marque journey, LEAF Marque is a leading global environmental assurance system recognizing more sustainably farmed products. And LEAF Marque is notably based on LEAF's integrated farm management principles, which are a set of principles recognizing that nothing in farming acts in isolation. So, for example, how you're managing soils impacts water and vice versa. And so integrated farm management is comprised of different areas across the farming business that are equally covered in the different sections of the LEAF Marque Standard to promote how integrated these areas of a business are and how they can work together in a synergistic way to promote more sustainable farming. So now we'll just do a brief overview of what our standard setting process looks like. So how do we update the LEAF Marque Standard? About every 3 to 5 years, we review the current version of the LEAF Marque Standard to see if it is as relevant and practical as it could be, what areas we might need to work on to ensure that the requirements are up to date and relevant, and also looking at how we can continue to support producers on that sustainability journey. Once we do a review, if we determine that a revision is required, then we embark on our revision process, which is a multiple step process. So throughout the whole process, we aim to get multi-stakeholder input from a range of stakeholders, including producers, certification bodies, and a lot of others in the industry and supply chains. We establish working groups to work on the different sections of the LEAF Marque Standard and advise on the development of the control points. These are multi-stakeholder working groups. We also have our LEAF Marque Technical Advisory Committee, which is a multi-stakeholder committee who oversee the development of the standard. And we have our LEAF Marque board, who also oversee the governance of LEAF Marque. So a key step in this revision process is holding public consultations. In this development of version 17, we'll be holding 2 rounds of public consultation. We'll talk about that in a moment. We have multiple ways for stakeholders to get involved, whether that's through surveys, webinars, communicating with us over email or phone call. We also do trial auditing and feasibility testing of new or majorly changed control points in the standard. And finally, when it comes to the approval of the standard, we have a final draft that's recommended and approved by the Technical Advisory Committee, sent off to the LEAF Marque board for final approval. When we then publish the standard, there's a 6-month transition period. So we publish it and there are 6 months between that publishing date and when the standard becomes effective for auditing. So I'll just give a brief overview of the review process we went through with version 16, or currently version 16.1 is the most current version of the standard that is effective for auditing. We conducted this review between January and September of last year via a survey and getting in-depth feedback from a lot of different producers and also our Technical Advisory Committee. And really the key feedback was that LEAF Marque should aim to improve international applicability of the requirements and try to improve the language, making it more simple and easy to understand, and also developing more robust guidance on how the requirements of the standard can be interpreted and implemented. So now that brings us to our current public consultation. We're currently in our first round, which will last until the 10th of May. So do get your comments and feedback in by the 10th of May. We'll then be doing some revisions and review of comments from the consultation, incorporating those revisions and feedback, and then putting out another draft in July. So that will be our second round of public consultation, if you'd like to get involved with that as well. Really, the aim of this consultation is to get a wide range of feedback from a wide range of stakeholders that we work with and interact with, particularly our key stakeholders, who are our producers and certification bodies. And we do provide a number of methods, as we covered, to get involved. So you can provide feedback via an online survey. We also have a short version of that survey if you are more pressed for time. We have these webinars that you can attend for information, as well as asking us questions. And of course, we also welcome comments and questions via email, phone, or written letter. And at the end of the consultation, we'll be reviewing and actioning the comments received. And at the end of the full consultation process, we'll be providing a summary of the feedback received during the consultation periods. So now we'll start going over the key changes to version 17 and the proposed different approach. So first, there's been a lot of structural changes to help improve the navigation and readability of the standard. So we've divided each section into subsections that have titles relevant to the control points within those subsections. And that is really to help categorize the control points based on their topic so that they are a bit easier to navigate. We've also then changed the formatting of those control points to improve the readability. So we'll come on to an example of that in a moment. We've added a guidance column, so our ambition is to add some very quick guidance, or a first point of guidance, I should say, in the standard, so that producers or anyone using the standard can immediately refer to that guidance column for support in interpreting the requirements. We also plan to have, for the first time, an Excel format of the standard available. We currently have a checklist format of the standard, which is a reduced or shortened version of the standard requirements fit into a checklist, but we will have an Excel format available. We're also exploring what different formats or features we might be able to include or make available for those with either learning or reading needs. Going on to language, we've tried to update and modify language throughout the standard to improve the international applicability, and also using more simplified language where we can, just to make the control points easier to read and more clear to understand. We do have different translations of version 16.1 available, but we wanted to announce that we'll also be adding Portuguese to those translations available. We're also working on making Portuguese available as a translated standard for version 16.1, so that won't wait until version 17 is published. On that note, we do have surveys and summary of changes documents available in multiple languages on our website, so that people can get involved no matter what language they speak. So we do encourage review of those. To give a kind of a snapshot, an example of how we're changing the structuring of the standard, this is a good example. Again, this is just the public consultation draft shown here. This won't be the official final formatting that's published with version 17. But here we can see we have the section title, which is Soil and Substrate Management. We have a subsection title called Internal Documentation, and the subsection is meant to contain all of those control points in this section that are related to paperwork and LEAF Marque or management-specific documentation. So that compiles all of that here so that a producer can easily see the kinds of core documentation needed from this section. We can also see how the control point format has changed. So in version 16 and previous versions of the standard, the verification text, which is the more detailed requirements under each control point, used to be in bullet point format, which at times was slightly confusing to interpret because some of the bullet points could be interpreted as guidance, while others were interpreted as a core requirement for, or a key requirement for the control point. So now we've tried to clarify this by breaking down the control point into sub-numbering and lettering for better clarity as to the different elements of the requirement that a producer needs to meet. And again, we'll be filling in that guidance column as version 17 is developed, so that is not final at the moment. Another key change, which we will discuss in more detail in the other webinars, if you would like more detailed information about these changes and the changes to these individual sections. We've changed the key section titles across the standard for most sections. So do refer to those upcoming webinars for information as to why these changes occurred. If you aren't able to join those webinars, we will be recording them if you'd like to watch them back. And we do have information on these section title changes on the public consultation webpage. We have summary of changes documents available where you can go read about that. Just a quick note that the animal husbandry, or what we are now calling the livestock management section, is still currently under development, and it is not included in this first round of public consultation, but it will be ready for public consultation in July. So we'll be seeking feedback on that section in a couple of months' time. So now we'll go over some quick language modifications that we have made to the standard to help with more applicability and relevance, as well as readability and clarity. So we have gone through a review and update exercise to transition some of that more UK-centric language into more internationally applicable language. And we do welcome feedback on this on the draft. If you do have some thoughts about how that language could be more internationally applicable or relevant, please do let us know. We would love to hear that feedback. We've also gone through an exercise to simplify the wording of many control points. So trying to use more simple and easy to understand language, or using fewer words where possible. And just a quick example of that here in version 16.1, our control point about reducing soil degradation is quite wordy, quite long, and we in version 17 have reduced the wordiness of that control point to make it more simple and straightforward to read and understand. So now we'll talk about another very key change to version 17, and that is the shift in our approach to categorizing the requirements in the standard, and also introducing a tiered approach to the standard. So in version 16.1 and in historical versions of the LEAF Marque Standard, we have had essential and recommended control points. And basically, essential control points have been required for certification, and recommended control points have not been required for certification, but were incorporated into the standard to promote continuous improvement and provide kind of ideas or additional considerations for a business to think about including in their sustainability approach, or updating management practices. In the version 17 standard, we are proposing a move to a core and advanced approach, and we'll go into more detail about what this entails in a moment. But really the reason to make this shift is to, one, recognize that producers are in different stages of their integrated farm management and sustainability journey, and having core and advanced criteria can better recognize this. This approach also supports continuous improvement and provides more clear opportunities for continuous improvement within the standard. So if we have a look at this diagram, there's really going to be two components to this tiered approach. The first component to be aware of is that the control point categories will change. So they'll change from essential and recommended to core, advanced 1, and advanced 2. And we'll go into more detail about that in a moment. These control point categories feed into the associated LEAF Marque tier. So if a producer is meeting all core requirements in the standard, they'll be in the core tier of LEAF Marque. Those who are meeting the advanced control points can fall into the advanced tier of LEAF Marque. So there will be also one more thing to note on this. There will only be one LEAF Marque logo that's representative of both of these tiers. So for example, you won't be able to at this time use a different logo if you're in an advanced tier of LEAF Marque. And however, we do plan to make available a way for businesses to demonstrate and evidence that they are meeting advanced criteria and falling into an advanced tier. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail now about what the difference between these control point categories are, and then after this we will talk about the tiering. So again, if we have a look here, in version 16.1, we had essential control points, which were mandatory for LEAF Marque certification. In version 17, those essential control points are becoming core control points. So these core control points are control points that must be complied with to meet certification. They're mandatory. In version 16.1, we had recommended or have recommended control points. In version 17, we will have two categories of advanced control points replacing that recommended category. So first we have advanced 1 control points, which are more rigorous or potentially more difficult than core control points. Compliance with advanced 1 control points is optional for LEAF Marque certification. It's not required. We then have advanced 2 control points, which are more difficult or more rigorous than the advanced 1 control points. And similarly, the compliance with these advanced 2 control points is optional for LEAF Marque certification. Like version 16.1, we will still have, for many control points, a not applicable option so that a business is able to apply that not applicable categorization depending on their situation or their system or business type. Certain requirements in the standard won't be applicable to certain systems, and we recognize that with this not applicable option. So we'll have a quick example here to look at some control points that are differentiated based on kind of the level of potential difficulty or rigor, and how they're categorized. So if we take this first control point here, 8.1, the business engages in knowledge sharing and learning activities. This control point requires businesses to engage in some form of, for example, peer-to-peer learning or attending a webinar to learn, things like that. And that will be required of all businesses. A next level up, for example, would be requiring a business to engage in collaboration with others. So we've categorized this as an advanced 1 control point. This is sort of the next step, the next level up from that knowledge sharing and learning. And collaboration can be, it's more about building on those relationships more formally or informally by partnering with others and looking to collaborate and cooperate together. And then the next step up from that would be engaging in collective action. So taking more formal action, partnered with others to work towards a collective sustainability goal. And this we would have categorized as an advanced 2 requirement. And now we'll briefly talk about the tiers and how the tiers fit into this. So as we talked about the control points, there are 3 control point categories, but 2 tiers. There's the core tier and the advanced tier. And those categories do correspond to these tiers. And really the purpose of these tiers the tiers aim to demonstrate where LEAF Marque producers are in their integrated farm management or sustainability journey. And again, we do aim to make available some method for businesses to demonstrate where they are in their sustainability, what they're achieving. So for example, perhaps they've achieved the entire advanced tier of LEAF Marque, or perhaps they want to demonstrate that they have achieved advanced criteria in water management or soil management and so forth. So we are going to be working on that as we develop version 17. We'll then have a look at this table here, which summarizes how the control point categories and the tiers connect to one another. So if we start with the core control points, the core control points are required for LEAF Marque certification. The core control points are also required for the core tier of LEAF Marque and the advanced tier. So at a minimum, all businesses that are going to be LEAF Marque certified must meet the core criteria. And they will automatically fall into the core tier of LEAF Marque. This core tier will be equivalent to at least the version 16.1 essential control points. The advanced 2 control points are not required for LEAF Marque certification. They are also not required for the core tier, but they are required for the advanced tier. So if you do want to reach the advanced tier of LEAF Marque, you need to meet and comply with all core criteria and all of the advanced 1 criteria. The advanced 2 control points are not required for LEAF Marque certification. They are not required for the core tier, and they are optional for the advanced tier. And they provide that continuous improvement pathway for those who are either meeting core or advanced 1 criteria. So that is an overview of the the key changes to the standard, an overview of our approach to revising the standard, as well as the key change to the control points and the tiering approach in version 17. Again, we're currently in public consultation number 1, which closes on the 10th of May. We do have surveys available to complete to provide more in-depth feedback on the control points and changes in the standard. And we'll have 5 webinars. So this is the first of the 5. The next webinar will be next Tuesday, I believe. That will focus on business planning and resilience and engaging society. So those 2 sections of the LEAF Marque Standard and what changes have been made in version 17. The third webinar will focus on soil and substrate management, as well as plant health and protection. The fourth webinar will focus on waste and byproduct management, as well as water management. The fifth webinar will focus on energy and greenhouse gas emissions, as well as landscape and biodiversity. So please do attend those sessions if you're able to ask questions and get more detail about the changes to those sections. We'll then have our second round of public consultation in July after we review and revise version 17 based on the feedback we received during this current public consultation. So we do really encourage you to feedback to us in whatever format is comfortable to you. And the aim is to publish version 17 in January of 2025, and it will then become effective for auditing in June. Oops, I think the date got cut off in June 2025.